I think this is definitely the furthest we've seen any of the people who has lost an election in 2022 or 2020 go. This guy ran in 2022. This guy right here by the name of Solomon Pena, whatever. He lost and it wasn't even close. His opponent got like 74% of the vote. He got like 20 something. So it wasn't a close race. He didn't lose because of voter fraud or pixie dust, or wasn't like, oh, if he was able to catch the three people who stole the vote or whatever, that he could flip their house. There was no way that this guy won the election. There's no conceivable way that enough voter fraud was done, which again, voter fraud is extremely rare in this country, extremely rare, could have been done to actually flip this House race. And there's no evidence of it that has been brought forward. But that didn't stop him from not conceding, because Donald Trump has normalized the fact that if you lose an election, you can whine, you can bitch, and you can moan, and then everybody's gotta like coddle you and tell you, oh no, you are the true winner of the election. Here, do you want a participation trophy? That's how we're treating democracy now. Okay, there's no like second place in democratic systems like you get in a war. No, he lost. He couldn't accept it. He decided to take the Trumpian route because he's a Trumper. He's a MAGA guy, and just said, no, I didn't lose. I'm going to research my options, because he doesn't respect the results of the election. He does not respect our democracy. And I can tell you he doesn't respect our democracy, because this guy who said he was researching his options apparently was not talking about legal options. Apparently, he was talking about a different set of options, which included assassinating his election opponents. I'm not kidding you. He lost 74 to 26, couldn't accept it, and then was like, what options do I have? Could I bring this to court? Could I bring evidence to the people that mass voter fraud took place that made me lose? There's no evidence of that, so that was never an option, I guess. No, he was like, let me murder people. Let me kill my political opponent and show my mega top G grind set and blast him and his family away. So apparently the guy wanted to orchestrate a terror attack, a shooting of his political opponent, and targeted his political rival's house. It's a pretty wild story. Let's listen to it.
Just a few hours ago, a SWAT team arrested former GOP candidate Solomon Pena at an apartment complex near Cole and Tingley. They believe these shootings were politically motivated.
Shootings.
I think it just so happened. Oh no, it was random. He actually is a Crip the whole time, and he just so happened to want to hit and rob the house of his political opponent. Yeah, politically motivated, you think?
Were orchestrated. They were dangerous attacks, not only to these individuals, which is personally the most terrifying for them, but fundamentally also to democracy. That is why this is so terrible. This type of radicalism is a threat to our nation, and it has made its way to our doorstep right here in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Solomon Pena was taken into custody at a downtown apartment building this afternoon. Pena made headlines last year as a convicted felon running as the Republican candidate for the New Mexico House District 14. Pena served 5 years in prison for leading a burglary ring. At the time, Pena said he got a degree and turned his life around. Pena lost his race to incumbent Representative Miguel Garcia, but never conceded. APD says today, after the election, Pena showed up uninvited at the homes of County Commissioner Adrian Barboa, former Commissioner Debbie O'Malley, and State Senator Linda Lopez, handing them documents that he claimed proved there was fraud in the election results. APD says Pena...
Damn. Oh my goodness, I had no clue that like the way you prove that the election was stolen is you just walk up to random elected officials and just say, here's the proof, make me president, make me county commissioner, make me state senator. No, you bring it to court. If you actually have evidence, then those people who participated in voter fraud, right? If they were doing this maliciously, trying to do it, it wasn't just some mistake, but like genuinely trying to change the results of the election and cheat, then they should be going to prison. You don't just show up to random people's homes uninvited, with no warning, and start saying, here's evidence that I should be king, okay? You bring this to a court, then you start the legal process. He didn't do that either because A, he's insane and trying to assassinate his political opponents, or B, he knows that there's nothing there and he just wants to be an elected official. He just wants power.
Committed one of the shootings himself, but hired other people to pull the trigger on his behalf in other shootings.
After the election in November, Solomon Pena reached out and contracted someone for an amount of cash money to commit at least 2 of these shootings. The addresses of these shootings were communicated over phone. Within hours in one case, the shooting took place.
The home of Democratic House Speaker Javier Martinez was also shot at in early December. APD announced last week they made an arrest in connection to one of the shootings. APD saying today that man, Jose Trujillo, is one of the hired hitmen. Back to you.
All right, thank you, Marilyn. At some point in December, the offices of State Senator Mo Maestas and Attorney General Raul Torres were shot at.
Okay, so we don't need to know any more of the story. We know the general he's and haws of the story, okay? We know the general story, okay? So, first off I want to say, what's the point of just shooting their home? Like what is even gained there? Like what's the now they will make me state senator, county councilman, whatever in New Mexico, like because we shot their home? What's even the goal? Was the goal to kill them? If the goal was to kill them, then I don't know, you hire them to kill them. Unless he thought that maybe one of these bullets would kind of like end up killing him or their family. Maybe it was just resentment for these politicians because again, he's going insane, so he just wants to terrorize them and murder their families and murder them, or see how he can hurt them for making him lose an election because he's such a sore loser. I mean, we saw how much Trump being a sore loser did damage on January 6th and during other riots that took place, like during the Million MAGA March. But I think this is definitely the furthest we've seen any of the people who has lost an election in 2022 or 2020 go. Because this is directly the person involved orchestrating a terror attack against his political opponents. Either because he thought maybe if he killed them all, then he would garner power. Maybe he just wanted to terrorize them because he's angry he lost. Maybe he thought he could scare them out of the political position and they would resign out of fear for themselves or their children, their wives, their husbands, their families. Who knows exactly why he did it? A point is, the dude lost an election, couldn't deal with the fact that he lost the election, and is now hiring people to strafe his political opponents' homes. He's trying to either assassinate them, terrorize them, or hurt them in some way. This right here, though, isn't that surprising. I know it feels like it should be surprising. If you're in that local community, then it probably feels very surprising. Like, I can't believe this happened to us. I can't believe this guy actually did that. Imagine how you would feel if you ended up voting for this guy. He loses, not even close. He gets curb stomped. So you're like, damn, my guy got curb stomped. Then you watch as the story comes out that the person you voted for tried to murder the other guy, tried to murder the political opponents, tried to murder people in your community, and was hiring hitmen to murder people. I couldn't even imagine how that would feel. But when I say this isn't that surprising, I don't mean like to the local community. Obviously, like, it happened to us. That's so surprising. What I mean is, like, on a grander scale, this isn't surprising. Like, stuff like this happening in this country, considering the amount of political division we have right now and the amount of claims that have been made about the 2020 election and the 2022 election, it isn't that crazy that this happened. And I'll try to explain why. If you genuinely believe, and I don't know if this guy genuinely believes it, he said he was researching his options. Obviously that research apparently went to the dark web or wherever he got this hitman. But when he said he was researching his options, in his mind, let's pretend, or we don't know for sure. So let's assume, and we're working off of this assumption, so we don't know this for sure, but let's assume that he doesn't only like sell the crack, he smokes it himself, and he genuinely believes that he was the true winner of the election, and he didn't lose in a landslide. He didn't lose by 74%. This was due to voter fraud, which, you know, he went to these random elected politicians, presented them the evidence. That's not how you submit it to a court to get it checked out. That's not how you bring this to the attention of the local system, but that's what he did. So let's assume that that evidence he brought forward, he genuinely believed showed that he was a true winner of the election, or that at the very least, that the election was not fair, equal, and run legitimately. If you believe that, if you believe an election was legitimately stolen from you, and I will assume, due to his Trumpism, MAGAism, and what he's saying here, that he probably also believes that the election was stolen from Donald Trump in 2020, and that other elections were stolen in 2022. If you genuinely believe that a democracy just isn't functioning on a basic level, where the people who actually got the most votes are the ones losing elections, then violence starts to become no longer a crazy thing you don't do in politics. Like, oh no, I'm never gonna go out and hurt anybody. We're a democratic system. With the whole reason we have democracy is so we don't solve our political issues by bashing in the heads of our neighbors with a tire iron, right? We do it by voting. We do it through judicial review. We do it through a system of checks and balances, through representatives, through representative democracy. That's the whole democratic system. If you believe that that system no longer works, then democracy and voting as a way of getting political change no longer is an option. If you believe that no matter what you do, no matter how many votes you get, no matter what you do in your democracy, that you're just going to lose because it's all rigged against you, like this guy possibly believes, then violence starts to become the only option. The whole reason I'm not like overthrow the US government and go firebomb this and firebomb that, even though I am like that for Myanmar, that I do think that that's a reasonable option there, is because there's no options. There's no democratic options because the military junta overthrew the democratically elected government because they didn't like that they kept losing elections, that their candidates, the candidates they liked, were not popular. For them, the PDF and all the people fighting against the government, all the ethnic militias and all this all across the country, they only have that option because there is no reconciliation with the military junta that is engaged in genocide against Rohingya Muslims and is currently slaughtering people who disagree with the government, protesters. There is no non-violent option. And that is why 1/3 of the country is now controlled by rebels. It is because those rebels and the people who have run from the cities to join the rebellions and try to coordinate with ethnic rebels, even though there's a lot of division amongst rebels, different groups and stuff like that across the country. The reason they're doing that is because there's no other option. And therefore, in my view, I think it is perfectly morally permissible for them to rebel and use violence to try to regain their democracy. And Michael Flynn, this was somebody who was Trump's national security advisor for a very short period of time before having to, step down for reasons you can go Google yourself. I don't have the time to talk about it right now, but he's a scumbag. He's a scumbag. He even endorsed, very briefly before reeling it back, a military-style coup like that in Myanmar. Why? Because the Myanmar military, even though it was very clearly just to crush a democracy because they were losing influence, they did it under the guise that the election was stolen and there was voter fraud, just copying Trump's playbook. Now, I do want to leave a disclaimer here that this is not the first time that claim has been pushed in Myanmar, so it's not 100% copying Trump's playbook, but you can hear the similar themes. And therefore, those similar themes garnered a lot of sympathy among Trump supporters. And when Michael Flynn said that and endorsed a military coup in Myanmar, which the proposal was from a Trump supporter to him during one of these like QAnon speaking conferences, it was because they believe there's no longer option. Many Trump supporters are starting to believe, maybe not many. When I say many, I don't know if it's the majority or the minority. I would say it's probably a smaller amount, but still a scary number of Trump supporters are starting to believe there is no peaceful option. Oh, that's why you're seeing all these crazies on TikTok saying civil war now, a civil war is coming. We need to overthrow the government. Q's going to do this and overthrow the government. And we need the military coup. We need this. We need that. They want a military coup. They want to overthrow the democracy because they believe, for whatever reason, either because they were tricked or, and this is probably true of somebody like Michael Flynn, they're just authoritarians. They just don't care about democracy. They just want their way or the highway. So whether this guy is an authoritarian and he just wanted his way or the highway and he wouldn't respect respect the results of the election, or he genuinely believes the election was stolen from him and possibly other Trump supporters in 2022 and Trump in 2020. If you genuinely believe that, violence, just like it is morally permissible from the rebels in Myanmar, starts to become like, oh, this is normal, this is fine, because we can no longer use any other means. If it ever got to a point in this country where democracy and democratic votes and representative democracy was no longer an option, violence could be morally permissible. Revolution could be morally permissible. That might sound crazy to say, but we are a nation based in revolution, overthrowing a system because of, taxation without representation. I don't need to get into American history, but we're a nation literally founded in rebellion, founded in the idea that we need like representative democracy, that if we are going to give authority for any entity to rule over us, we need to have some system to have influence over that system, over that institution. And since Trump has convinced so many people that the system is rigged, he even said it in the lead up to 2020, that if he loses, it's rigged. Then he lost, then he said it was rigged, pushed tons of conspiracy theories about, the voting machines and bamboo paper and all this nonsense. If you genuinely believe it, then this is no longer that crazy. Because all you're doing is trying to bring back your democracy, bring back the true results of the election, the true results of the vote. And that is scary. Because in their own sick little, demented, knuckle-dragging worldview, this is actually respecting democracy and trying to protect it or bring it back, not a crazed maniac engaging in assassinations and terrorism because he's a sore loser, which is the actual reality of the situation. Trump's delusions and Trump's statements about election fraud and the elections being stolen has produced a new generation of crazies who don't care about a democracy, who don't care about our system of checks and balances, and don't care if they win or lose elections. They just need to win, and if they don't win, it was because it was rigged, and it's impossible for them to lose. And you could talk to people in the lead up to the 2020 election. Then you would ask, is there any way Trump could lose? Nope, impossible. Impossible. If he loses, it's rigged. And that's because Trump geared them up for that, prepared them for that. And now we're seeing the results of that. Because if you truly are a true believer of either QAnon or Trump's election being stolen, violence no longer becomes this crazy thing that we don't do because we're a democracy. Because in their view, we're no longer a democracy. So violence to restore that democracy, in their view, is totally morally permissible. That's not to say that everybody who uses political violence in this way, or everybody who says, oh, the election was stolen, even necessarily believes it. This guy could be a true believer. I don't know. But I do think that a lot of crazed maniacs have been convinced. And this is going to be the natural result of that. The natural result of you not respecting the democratic outcome and you pretending that the election was rigged against you is going to be people getting more and more riled up past every election. I don't know what 2024 is going to look like, especially if Trump runs again and loses, which is definitely a possibility. I know a lot of people talk about Ron DeSantis. Last poll I saw was Ron DeSantis at 30% in the Republican primary and Trump at 50%. If Trump's the nominee again and loses again, which all the head-to-head matchups between Trump and Biden sees like Trump losing by like 6 or 7 points. It's not really even that close. If that's the case, then I think we're going to see another wave of violence. And we need to do everything we can to stamp out this narrative so we have the least amount of crazies believing this nonsense, because they've already, in their minds, had the election stolen in 2020, had the election stolen in 2022, and possibly we're going to watch them think that they had the election stolen in 2024. And so we need to be ready for that wave of violence and do everything we can to discourage that wave of violence and restore trust in our democratic institutions. How do we do that? I don't know, man. Transparency is key, but no matter how transparent you are, if you want to walk back from your conclusion and you just believe Trump is God and everything he says is gospel, then there's nothing you can do to convince them. And that's the difficulty we find ourselves. How do you reason with somebody who's unreasonable? You can't make sense of nonsense, is, what my grandmother used to tell me. So, yeah, that's the difficulty we find ourselves in. And, man, I'm not looking forward to 2024.